McGill, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to remove your mute there. But, it's been a pleasure being able to work with you, both with your partnership at the last acquisition conference with Murphy Business, and then also just getting to know you personally and the heart that you have, the mission that you have to be able to make sure that business owners exit their companies for maximal value, number one, to enable them to live a life of impact, a life of flourishing, and that's really what we believe. That's what I believe personally. So I think that's where you and I connected. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you, about your journey, and then also how others can utilize and leverage what you're doing. So at this moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you can start sharing yours.
Yeah, it should be on there once you stop sharing. Can you see my screen okay, Nate?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is super exciting. Thanks so much, Nate, for letting me be a part of this. The Acquisition IQ Network is just doing amazing things. We're super excited to be a part of it and excited to see what um, is going to happen here in the months and years to come. As Nate said, my name is Dave McGill. I'm a business broker with Murphy Business Sales. We're one of the top business brokerages in North America. And as you might guess, we help business owners sell their companies when they're ready to move on to the next chapter, whether it be retirement or they're just getting bored and want to do something else, whatever it might be. So today I'm going to share with you basically what business brokers actually do and how we make the selling process easier, smoother, not quite as overwhelming as it typically is if an owner were to try to sell their business on their own. A little about me: I owned and sold 5 businesses of my own before becoming a broker. And I've experienced that stressful process for myself, and it is a lot to manage. Anybody who has tried to do that, I'm sure, is aware. In fact, I learned after selling one of my businesses that I left about 40% of the value on the table. And that's a big part of why I joined Murphy. My business partner and I have 7 years of combined experience with Murphy. And we love helping business owners go through this process, answering their questions, giving them the confidence to to go through the process and end where they want to end, get what they want out of selling their business, so that they can move on and enjoy the fruits of their labor for years and years that they've spent in that business. So what we're going to talk about, basically, we're going to look at some statistics of small businesses. We'll discuss the value of an intermediary or a business broker that we bring to the process. And we'll take a look at some of the main functions that we perform as business brokers. So let's just jump right into it. I'm not going to share a ton of statistics, I promise, but a few of these are, I think, pertinent to our discussion. So right now, there are about 6 to 8 million small businesses. Now, you'll see different numbers out there. There are probably an additional 30 million businesses that are one man, one woman businesses. So these are businesses that have an owner and at least one up to 99 employees, about 6 to 8 million of them. Now, in the next 5 to 10 years, about 70% of these businesses will go up for sale, is what the statistics say. Now, if you break down the numbers on this, that's a lot of businesses, but I did the math, and that basically, if we look at, let's call it 7 million businesses, that's 1,800 businesses going up for sale per day. Or if you break it down by state, just an equal number among every state is 36 businesses per day in every state in the U.S. that a business is going up for sale. There are a ton of businesses out there where people are exiting, and the big problem is this last point here: 75% of these business owners do not have an exit plan. So what do? Well, they try to figure it out on their own. Um, in many cases. In fact, these are the business owners that I love working with because they've already tried the process. They've realized how difficult it is And they finally given up and said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I need to bring some expert help in, and then we come in and we're able to take the ball and run with it from there. So business owners that try to sell their businesses, they have generally, the statistics say, about an 18 to 20% success rate. If you work with a broker or an intermediary, that more than doubles, okay, to 40, 45% are the chances of selling that business. Now with Murphy, a shameless plug here, our statistics show that about 65 to 85% of the businesses that we list actually sell. And here in Utah, we're actually on the higher end of that, more toward the 80, 85% range. Now, I don't know if any of you guys play golf, but if you do, you understand that there is a lot that goes into that perfect swing, right? My dad gave me this instruction sheet that has the 47 most important things to think about during your golf swing. And that's about a 1.5 second moment. So selling a business on your own as the business owner is much like that. Okay. This is more or less 25 steps that we take. In fact, some of these you'll see have multiple steps within one category, one box. So it's, 30, 40 steps maybe that business owners are actually going through to sell their business. So question comes up all the time. Why should I use an intermediary? I know my business better than anybody. Why do I need a broker? Well, selling your business is very different than running your business. And there are all types of problems that business owners run into when they try to sell their business. For number one, as I mentioned before with my business, proper valuation. What is the price? We have all kinds of tools and access to all kinds of data to calculate exactly what a fair market value is and how much that business should sell for. You don't have to waste time with unqualified borrowers or buyers. This one here is maybe the biggest one, maintaining confidentiality. When a business owner is trying to sell their business, in most cases, they don't want their employees to know, they don't want their vendors to know, they don't want customers to know. They need to keep this a private transaction. And how in the world do you do that when you're trying to run your business and when you're the one selling your business? It's almost impossible to make that situation work and keep things confidential. So the owners can keep running their business while we, the broker, take over and do all the dirty work to meet with the buyers and maintain the confidentiality and qualify buyers. And then we help the buyers understand the whole buying process. So even though a broker, or sorry, a business owner might find a qualified buyer, going through the process and helping them trust the process and the numbers and everything, to have a third party, an intermediary, come in and explain, we've done the verification, we've looked at all the numbers, this is accurate. It gives more credibility to the value and the data that we're trying to sell for that business. So what do buyers want? I'm not going to go through this whole list, but one really important thing is verifiable books and records. It's kind of surprising how often we come across businesses where the books are just kind of a mess. So we need to bring in maybe some assistants, bookkeepers, accountants to kind of clean up the books for them. We might help in some cases as well, depending on how dire the situation is or how messy it is. They're looking for a non-compete agreement. They don't want to buy this business and then have the business owner, turn around and start up a competing business and steal all the customers. They want some assistance, when help them kind of get up and running, to answer questions and help them understand the process and what happens when you run into some unforeseen situations. Is financing available? Is it financing through an SBA loan? Is the seller willing to finance? All those kinds of things the buyers are looking for, and we are able to get ahead of this to find out all this information from the buyers before we even introduce them to the seller. So the seller's running their business and not wasting time or taking time to meet with them until we have a fully qualified buyer who understands the majority of what their business is and how it works. Now, we're going to talk about kind of the main things that we do as business brokers. The first thing is listing a business. So we'll calculate the business valuation. We have access to comparable sales out there. We have we utilize industry data. We look at trends. We look at the outlook. We use all this information. And actually, at Murphy, we come up with three valuations, and they're based on different characteristics of the business. Depends on what type of business it is, what industry it's in, as to which one pulls more weight. Some of them are more asset driven if they have a heavy asset business. Service businesses have kind of a different multiple and look at different characteristics. So we'll come up with a valuation that is going to be solid, not only for a potential buyer, but for lenders. When we send out our confidential information memorandum, which is basically the details about what this business is, lenders know us, they trust Murphy, and they're able to quickly go through that and give us an approval or pre-approval on these businesses. So all of great value to what might be needed down the road when a buyer now needs financing. We have a pre-approval. We work through the engagement agreement, which is the agreement that we with the seller, with the business owner, and the logistics of how that's going to look. We prepare financials. In most cases, we have to do some type of normalizing or recasting of those financials, and then we do a promotional flyer, which is kind of a teaser flyer. We don't verify or we don't reveal the name of the business. In many cases, it's a very generic explanation of the business, enough to spark interest, but not so much that somebody would guess who it is, so that they're not calling the business owner, bugging them, and doing what we should be doing ourselves, and qualifying and pre-qualifying those buyers. So the teaser flyer, once they say, yeah, I like what I see, they get back to us and say, hey, I'm interested. We send them a non-disclosure agreement. They sign the non-disclosure agreement. And once they sign that, we send them a confidential information memorandum, which has the details, the specifics of that business. So at that point, they've agreed to keep everything confidential, and we reveal a lot of what that business is about. At this point, we haven't quite yet given all the financials, but it's all kind of processed step by step. And as each step is successful and they want to continue, then we'll reveal more information. And the idea is we don't want to give them customer lists and employee lists and all that data until basically we have an offer, so that we're not giving away all this information to potential competitors and that kind of thing. So that's the listing of the business. Now, when it comes to normalizing the financials, this is almost always a required part of the process, and that is basically, the financial statements are prepared based on tax returns and performance of the business. But when a buyer is actually looking at a business, there are certain things that the buyer is not necessarily going to incur, certain expenses that we need to add back. So people talk about EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Seller's discretionary earnings is kind of one step beyond that, where we're adding back some of these things, including those items that I mentioned. But so in this example, we've got kind of a basic financial statement, an income statement here. Well, when it comes to the owner's salary, that owner is no longer going to be working in the business, and maybe the new owner is going to hire a salesman to replace the owner. They're going to run the business. So instead of the $172,000 salary, we're going to pay a salesperson or a manager $80,000. So we make that adjustment. We add back interest, because interest is not specific to the business. It's only dependent on what that person's debt is, and so that's going to be different for buyers depending on if they pay cash or if they get a loan or whatever. So we add the interest back. We add back depreciation, because depreciation is utilized as a tax advantage. But as they depreciate their assets, they're able to write that off, and it reduces their income and therefore their taxed amount. We add back if there's owner's life insurance, if there are personal vehicles that are being paid, if an employee or a family member is being paid as an employee but isn't technically working in the business. We add all those things back, and then we come up with what we call the seller's discretionary earnings. And that is what we use typically for for calculating the multiple. And the multiple is basically how many times your seller's discretionary earnings or your EBITDA um, will justify the value of the business. So if this one, let's say it's $200,000, maybe the multiple in this case, let's say it's 3.5, and so we're looking at a valuation of about $700,000 if this business were worth about had about 200,000 in seller's discretionary earnings. Okay, next thing we do, we've got the business listed. Everything's ready to go. Now we market it. Okay, so as far as the marketing process goes, we have lists of people who are interested in buying businesses. Some of them are very generic on what type of business they want to buy. They just want a business maybe with a general amount of seller's discretionary earnings. Maybe they don't want to replace their income, but they're not specific about what industry or location or anything like that. So we have those lists of hundreds really of buyers who are ready to buy. We'll typically go to them first and say, hey, we've got a business we're about to list. We want to give you the opportunity to take a look at that. Are you interested? And we'll go through this process with them. Once we've gone through that process, and this is usually a fairly quick process, just a day or two, we'll often do a pre-market launch, and we'll send this our teaser or promotional flyer out to all the buyers that we have, saying, hey, this is our pre-market launch. This business is getting listed, this Wednesday. You have a few days to take a look at it. Let us know if you're interested, and we'll communicate with you quickly during this time. And oftentimes we're able to sell businesses before it even hits the market, before we even list the business on the websites. Well, if we get to that point and the business hasn't sold, then the next step is we list it on business sites. Murphy has a database of all the businesses that we have for sale. Axial, Biz by Sell. There are, depending on the business and the situation, we list our businesses on about 8 to 10, sometimes 12 different business sites where people are looking to buy businesses. And in many cases, we get to the point where we have multiple people that are interested in the business, and they're all trying to negotiate, the best deal that they can get. And we'll work with those 3, 4 prospects and say, look, we have offers from 3 or 4 of you. Here's kind of what we're looking at. Give us your best offer, and we're going to go with the best offer. So in some cases, we're able to sell businesses for more than they're actually listed for, and possibly more than market value, because we get people competing for a business that has, a high demand. Then we get into negotiating a deal. So once we find potential buyers, they look at all the statistics, they look at the numbers, the data, and they'll say, well, I want to do this, I want more of that, less of this. We work through that process. We manage multiple offers. We act as a buffer between the buyer and seller. So often you get, as you see in this picture, they're so far off from the employer wanting to give $65,000 to this employee, and the employee wanted $100 million. Sometimes we're not quite that far off usually, but sometimes there's a gap. And we help narrow that gap and figure out where the happy medium is, so that the buyer and the seller don't have to get into the heated debates and those uncomfortable conversations where people end up oftentimes getting mad, frustrated with the deal, and they just walk. We help manage that so that doesn't happen. We don't lose deals. We negotiate the price. Earnouts. Earnouts is that's, for example, they might have based the price on the trend of 30% growth over the last 3 years, but the buyer's thinking, well, this industry has changed, and I'm not sure it's going to still grow another 30%. We can make a contingency where if it doesn't grow 30%, then that portion is held aside and not paid out yet until that earnout period is met. And if any adjustments need to be made, we'll help make those adjustments as well. We coordinate with any other professionals, outside professionals that might be a part of the business, attorneys, lenders. We work with the due diligence. all of that. So this is all a part of negotiating the deal. So those are kind of the three processes or three steps, the three main things that we do in the business. Shameful plug: we're one of the top business brokerages in North America, 31 years of experience. We are all our brokers are trained extensively. If anybody's heard of a broker, they've typically heard of Murphy Business Sales. We have a huge network of experts, huge network of buyers that we work with, and we have a complete package depending on, no matter what the business is, we have access to all the people, all the experts in all fields to be able to provide and capture whatever we need to help make that transition smooth for the buyers. So that's my spiel. That was a lot. If you have any questions, please chime in, or Nate, I'll give it over to you if you have anything that you want me to touch on.
I think it's important to, ask a few questions as well, and then allow for individuals who are on the call. We've got Pete Larson. Are you there, Pete? If he's not, that's okay. But I think you did a wonderful job being able to help explain exactly the why utilize a broker, and then in addition to that, your entire process. Because I think that the process is where people get a little hung up. And then also, I'm sure you've probably experienced this too, Dave, when people they think it's not just thinking about making a sell of your company, it's about the preparation leading up to that. Can you share with
100%.
me just a little bit about how many people that you have conversations with in preparation leading up to the sell of their company, and how long is that time frame?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that time frame can vary a ton. What we like to do is when somebody is when we're talking with somebody, engaging with somebody, they might say, "Well, I'm selling my business in 5 years or so. So when should I come to you?" And I say, let's have a conversation. Let's sit down and talk about where you are right now. We can even work on evaluation for your company on based on today's numbers and data. And if we notice certain areas where you could improve and maybe work to improve your value, then we can point those out and give you something to work on in the coming years as you work on that. Now, when it comes to selling a business, oftentimes it's about 10 to 15% of the time that businesses are sold or closed down because of the three D's: death, disease, or divorce. And divorce could be divorce from your spouse or divorce from your business partner. um, those kinds of things happen without warning. And so, if we're able to have conversations early on with these business owners, it really helps them conceptualize and kind of figure out a plan of what to do moving forward, and how to navigate that process when the time comes. And in many cases, they might say, when we come up with evaluation, I worked with a guy just last week, and he said, "Hey, if I can get a couple $1 million out of my business, cleared once everything is said and done, then I'll sell." We're in the process of valuing this business now, and I think it's going to be around, closer to $3 million valuation. And so he's now saying, "Well, heck, if I can get 2.5 million, 3 million out of my business, I'll sell now and then enjoy the next 5 years."
Yeah.
And so I would say it's never too early necessarily. And I think a lot of times things come up that they otherwise wouldn't have thought of, um, that can help them better navigate that process
Mhm.
as that time gets closer.
Yeah. I think it's also too about normalizing the conversation of an exit. I think that even when people are starting their companies, just having that as an additional element of the business plan. And I think that, that's almost a duh statement, but many people are overlooking the fact that they will exit, like you said, whether it's a separation, whether it's, death, or whether it's other things, that are involved with an exit of a business. And I think that, we don't want to work our entire lives just to be owned by our companies that we build as operators. I don't know how many of you out there are operators, but absolutely you know what I'm talking about because you get excited about what you're building. You get excited about the future that you're creating, but there does come a time where you've got to be very serious about creating value and continually creating value, not just for yourself, but for the legacy that you're going to live, for the people that are leveraging your product or service, and just having those, I guess, quote unquote, uncomfortable conversations about the end, which is really important. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'd say, Nate, along with that, um, most business owners don't, if they haven't gone through a full, plan of, what their exit strategy is and what they're going to do and when and how that whole process looks, uh, they don't even know what questions to ask. They have
true.
no idea
Yeah,
where to begin. I have conversations every single week, and sometimes multiple times a week, where people say, "Dang, I wish I would have known about you 6 months ago or a year ago. I shut my business down."
yeah,
We're finding that all the time, where people are just shutting their businesses down because they didn't know where to begin. They didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know what to do. So rather than having that experiencing that, not only are they giving away, or just completely shutting down what they've done all their lives and the potential of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, they're also denying a potential buyer out there who would happily pay a fair market value for that business and would love to. I mean, the statistics of buying an existing business that's been going for 5, 10, 20 years, the success rate on those is just, it's incomparable to the success rate on people starting a business from scratch. So I would say to business owners, let's just talk. Regardless,
yeah.
if you hear this message, let's have a conversation and talk about what that might look like for you, and maybe what next steps are for you in this
That's
process.
good. That's really good. So what I'm gonna do is I do respect everyone's time on here and also want to make sure that we have any other questions that anyone ha does have answered. Pete, did you have any questions or Jonathan or anyone else that's on here right now? Can we help to address those?
Yeah, I was just wondering what your thoughts are on when a business owner might engage with you to talk with you about selling their business. Uh, the reason I ask is because a lot of times they think, well, when I'm ready to sell, I'll call the broker,
Mm.
but they never think to um, say that maybe the business broker can help me get my valuation a little higher and ready for a sale, as opposed, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
can,
Yeah, that's good.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I would just say to that, Pete, if somebody plans on, look, I'm going to run this business till I die. I'm 30 years old. Probably not a good time to talk with them.
right?
But if they're 5 years out even, and potentially selling their business, now is not too early to have that conversation, because 5 years could turn into 2 years, based on the valuation of the, or based on what happens in their business. And what we do when we have these initial conversations is just make a clear path to, we ask all the questions that business owners should be answering for themselves to understand, when they should sell, what to what to look for as they anticipate potentially selling down the road. So I would say if you're thinking about selling your business in the next 2 to 5 years, that's not too soon to engage with a business broker.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just add to that that there are definitely things that you can do to make the valuation of your business better if you've got 2 or 3 years to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Just in the way that you're accounting, the way that you're marketing, you can kind of set your business up for a bigger sale.
Yeah, and sometimes what that looks like too is, when you look at ad backs to come up with the seller's discretionary earnings, sometimes people come up with just these long laundry lists of ad backs, and some of them just aren't that significant. So we could say, look, you've taken advantage of these ad backs for 15 years. As you're getting ready to sell your business, let's let's clean up your books and run the business as you would a normal business, and not take advantage of all the tax advantages, because then we don't have to worry about documenting everything. Any ad back that you have that changes the numbers from like the tax returns or the audited financials has to be documented. And the more stuff you have to document, the more complicated that thing becomes, and the less interested potential buyers get, because they're like, wait, what are the real numbers? Is this guy real? So, but
Right,
yes, you make a
exactly.
great point, Pete. Absolutely.
That's good. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Really do appreciate it. You are a wealth of knowledge. And, I'm just going to finish out our presentation here with the Acquisition IQ Network, and then we'll be on our way.